On this episode of Still Loading...
Sly! Come in! Sly! Do you read me?
Yeah, I read you. Loud and very loud.
Hello everyone, welcome to this new episode of Still Loading. We are continuing again the summer of PS2. I feel like that is my intro for every episode for this entire thing. I don't know how else to say. We're moving along throughout the summer. And this week we are going to cover the game of Sly Cooper for the PS2. This is the third week of the summer of PS2 so far. And with me, you may remember him from the Super Smash Bros. Episode, is Ben. Ben, how are you doing?
Fabulous Fish.
Fabulous Fish, spelled... it's very different. G-H, right?
O-T-I.
For fish, yeah. G-H-O-T-I. You explained to me a long time ago how that works. Like, because how does it work? How did it come to that again?
So it is G-H, as in words like rough or tough or enough, makes the f sound.
Makes the f sound, okay.
Then it's O, as in women, makes the I sound. And then T-I, as in pretty much any word that ends with T-I-O-N, makes a sh sound.
Okay, this makes a lot more sense because
Yes.
you wrote this to me when we were first like corresponding and messaging back and forth about it. Corresponding, it makes it sound like we were like it's like the.
It's a very professional like business correspondence,
right? Yeah, you when we were first messaging back and forth, you talked about it, and I was like, oh, okay. But in my head, I was like, I don't get it.
Well, there's actually another way you can pronounce it, and that is the GH as in although, the O as in people, the T as in ballet, and the I as in business.
Business.
So you don't pronounce any of the letters in that version.
Yeah.
So I could just be fabulous with nothing after it.
That's funny. I like that. Yeah, English is a dumb language.
Yeah,
it really is.
it is.
It's a ridiculous language. You'd be surprised how often that I actually have conversations with people about how dumb English is.
Yeah.
Only for the fact of, and you proved it more than that, like way more in depth than ever I did. I just mentioned how red and read are spelled the same way, but they mean completely different things. Well, hold on. Not red. There's lead and lead. They're spelled the exact same way, but they mean completely different things.
There's also the sentence buffalo, 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 buffalo.
Is it 7 times or how many? 8 times?
And it's a complete sentence.
Because buffalo can be literally everything. An adjective, a verb, a noun, whatever.
Also a proper noun, separate from a noun.
Are you an English major? Or
No, but I'm dating one. So.
Okay, so that makes sense then. So yeah, we are going to talk about Sly Cooper today. And before we do that, as I do with all my guests for this the summer of PS2, when was the first time you came to know the PlayStation as your Lord and Savior? No, when did you first get into the PlayStation 2? What's some of your earliest PlayStation 2 memories?
So Christmas 2002, I had been interested in video games because I saw some advertisements for them on TV, and some of my mom's friends up in New York we were visiting had some games. So my parents got me a PS2, and I opened up that year a bunch, maybe 10 or so games were with it.
Mm-hmm.
I was super excited. I didn't know anything about any game consoles then. I just knew, okay, this is the PlayStation 2. I guess it's the second one. Plugged it in, hooked up. First game I played was Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights, which is a half-decent Metroidvania kind of platform. Very good.
Metroidvania,
yeah,
really?
Very good fit for the Scooby-Doo franchise because you're constantly backtracking, returning to old areas now with new abilities or information. First half of the game is excellent. It tanks hardcore in the second half, but still very nostalgic for me nonetheless. That was the first game I played. I had a few other games on it as well. I had, off the top of my head, actually, I'm drawing a blank on other PS2 games. I know I had some PS1 games. I had Powerpuff Girls Chemical Extraction, one of the worst games of all time. Truly very fun, though. Another Scooby-Doo game, I had Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, which is basically a Crash Bandicoot ripoff. It's so dumb, but again, it's just kind of cheesy fun. I had Land Before Time, Great Valley Racing Adventure.
There's a lot of weird racing games on the PlayStation 1.
Oh, Ants, Extreme Racing. based on the DreamWorks movie Ants.
With Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, that's just another weird game out there that exists.
I guess Mario Kart was just so popular they just put any franchise they could into a racer. That would be a great topic for an episode, like licensed games that don't need racers versions.
Licensed games that don't need to exist, like Friends, the one with all the trivia.
Is that actually a licensed game?
I own 3 copies of it.
The one with all the is it a trivia game about Friends?
Yep.
Or is it okay? I wasn't sure if it was just like trivia in general, just general trivia.
No, it's about the TV show. So if you haven't seen the TV show, there's literally no value in that game.
Yeah, I could. Yeah,
I'm of the belief the licensed game should be fun if you don't know the license, a la like Battle for Bikini Bottom, which anyone can play and enjoy if you don't know SpongeBob.
It's the same thing. I would agree with that. Same thing with like the quintessential licensed game from the N64, GoldenEye. That game's fun even if you've never seen the James Bond.
I know
movie.
very little about James Bond, and that's probably I've heard a very fun game.
If you want to know about James Bond, I will bore your mind off. Bore
That'll be the next podcast episode.
Right. But bore your mind off. I can't speak today. So we are talking Sly Cooper, though. Sly Cooper came out on September 23rd, 2002, developed by Sucker Punch Productions, as they call it. Have they changed their name? I would just say Sucker Punch Studios, but
I don't know if they've changed their name or not.
They are now known for the Infamous series as well as the upcoming, oh my gosh, Ghosts of Tsushima, I think?
Yeah, that's the title.
That's the name of it, which I'm looking forward to, just because I like Sucker Punch Studios. I loved the Infamous games as well. But Sly Cooper is where they got their start. And this kind of caps off... The reason we're talking about Sly Cooper today, one, because it's an iconic franchise, but two, it caps off the first 3 episodes of the summer of PS2, where I wanted to talk about the major platforming games on the console: Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper. And these are in no particular order. I know Sly Cooper is your favorite. Ratchet and Clank is mine. I had my brothers on for Jak and Daxter. That is their favorite of the 3. I would say maybe Matthew likes Ratchet and Clank, but in any case, so let's dive right into it then. With Sly Cooper, this game is, I would say the first thing that sticks out to me is when you're comparing it to the other 3. And this is not in terms of which is better. I know we were joking off mic about how I like Ratchet and Clank. I think Ratchet is better. But no, the first thing that sticks out to me, especially when you're comparing them to the other 2 platformers, the big platformers, I should say, on the console, is this is the only one that's stealth focused.
Yes.
And it pulls it off in a way where it's not obnoxious, but it's still there. So yeah, what do you think? Do you agree with that?
Hardcore. So Sly Cooper is a game that on the surface level does just kind of appear to be a platformer. The stealth comes into play through the game's very, I'd say, controversial one-hit mechanic. You can kill an enemy in 1 hit. Every enemy except for the 5 bosses dies in 1 hit. However, you also die in 1 hit.
Unless you have the horseshoe, right?
Yes,
which we haven't talked about yet, but yeah, it's...
And I kind of wish there was actually an option to disable that, honestly. I like
to make it more difficult.
Yeah, I like the game like that. But Sly Cooper is very much about you don't want to be seen by your enemies right away. You want to try to sneak up behind them or potentially avoid them altogether. And when we get more to game mechanics, I can actually break down some of the enemy design for you, because I can write you essays on why this game's level design is fantastic.
It is good level design. I really enjoy. I also liked in one of the specific things just about level design in this. I liked that the hub world is not just a zone. It's actually a level where you have to get to the hub level, the hub's area, the hub zone. And there's multiple hub zones in each of the episodes.
Each world or episode has one hub. Before you, when you get to each level, first you do one kind of level that brings you to the hub, and then from the hub you can go to the other 5 or 6 levels that world has.
Just hubs, it's hubception.
Yeah.
Because you have, so actually let's talk about the characters, because that'll help frame the levels, and because the story, while it's very simple, it is very important, I would say.
It's honestly a little darker than you'd expect for a kid's game too, I'd argue.
Yeah, there's a couple moments in it that surprised me.
So this game's story is your character is Sly Cooper, who's a famous international thief. And he's specifically trying to steal back something that is rightfully his, that being his family's heirloom book, the Thievius Arcunus, which explains all his family's like thieving techniques and tricks and history.
And they are thieves that steal from other thieves, I
Yes,
believe.
they
correct?
primarily go for other thieves. I wouldn't say exclusively, but that is like their main target.
Because that's provides the biggest challenge for these master thieves.
Yeah, so they define themselves as master thieves. They believe themselves to be the greatest thieves in the world, and it's been like a family tradition for generations, I think dating back to ancient Egypt. Sly himself actually did not inherit the book. His father was murdered by a group of villains called the Fiendish Five on the night Sly was supposed to get the book, and they ended up ripping the book up and spreading the pages around the world and keeping parts of it for themselves. And so the plot of Sly Cooper and the Thieves Raccoonus is you are now tracking down each of these thieves individually to kick their asses and get the book back.
And you have a colorful cast of characters to help you along with it. You have Murray. You have who's the turtle? Bentley is the turtle, right? Murray is a hippo, I think.
Yes,
right.
Murray's a hippo.
And then you also have this. She's kind of like your aunt. She's definitely a good guy, but Carmelita Fox. She's trying to chase you because you're a thief, but at the same time, she's not like evil.
No, but she does take credit for everything you do. At the
That's
end
true.
of every case, after you beat the boss, you end up ditching them, and then she arrests them and claims that she's the one who caught them. So she's not quite as much of an honest cop as you would expect her to be.
You know what? You're right. And because she hates Sly too much, she doesn't want to admit that she is benefiting from him.
Yeah, no, she has like an obsession with catching Sly. It's actually kind of unhealthy, but I really like that about the characters, that every one of them is more than just like their initial trait. You know, she's not just the cop.
Yeah.
She's the cop who has dedicated her whole life to catching one thief because it drives her crazy that she has an imperfect record because she hasn't caught him yet.
And then she continues to benefit by that thief being left out there because it improves her record over and over, like more and more. And then Bentley is a turtle. He's kind of like the tech guy. He's tech
the
guru.
brains of the group.
He annoys the shit out of me personally.
Oh, really? I
don't
love him.
not because of his character, but he talks so much and his voice is a little obnoxious. Yeah, hello, Sly.
My
or something
girlfriend does a perfect impression of
Does
his
he?
voice.
Or she? Sorry, I don't know.
We did, for when I did a Sly Cooper playthrough on YouTube, we actually did a live action recreation of the intro to that game, as in like I was dressed as a thief and like climbing on rooftops and stuff. And when I called her on the Binocucom, I added like the whole Binocucom interface on the screen, and then she was Bentley in like the little corner. She's like, Sly, come in. I can't do the Bentley voice. It's
Sly.
like it's like too high pitched for me.
Yeah, no. And then Murray is the muscle, and admittedly, Murray is. I don't
in
know.
Sly 1, he is the weak link of the cast.
I was
say.
definitely going to say because they're one of my least favorite levels, and we're going to get to it as we talk about some of the levels. But like my least favorite levels is the ones where you have to guide Murray along a designated path and shoot enemies as they come.
Yeah.
It's a rail shooter essentially, but you're not moving along a rail.
I have a lot to say about those. We'll get to those when we go through the levels.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I enjoy Murray. I do enjoy him a lot, but I do think the game's sequels made Murray a much more memorable character. And
Now, I have not even played Sly 2 or 3 yet. I need to.
I have a very controversial opinion that is that I think Sly 1 is the best by a country mile.
Really? Okay.
Yes, maybe a good discussion for another time in depth, but I don't know. I really don't like Sly 2. I think 3 is better than 2, but nothing special. And then I actually think 4 is a little better than 3. I know that's sacrilegious. Everyone says 4 is the worst in the series. I wouldn't call it anywhere near as good as the first one, but I enjoyed it more than 2, definitely.
I still need to. So I played the first one and I burned through it. Then I got, and then so that's why I haven't played. So I burned through it, and because of that, I wasn't in the mood. I had burnt myself out essentially on Sly because I just binged it for like a week straight. Just anytime I was not at work or not working on the podcast, I was playing Sly Cooper, and this was probably about a year ago or so.
Was this your first playthrough?
Yeah, my first playthrough.
One thing
I loved it. It was great.
One thing a lot of people don't realize is a first playthrough of Sly Cooper is really hard. Like, you die
Surprisingly,
a lot in that game. And death can be really punishing because if you run out of lives, it sends you back to the beginning of the level as opposed to the checkpoint.
I didn't have too many issues with it, but I'm also like, so there's certain genres of games that I actually talked about this with my my guest that I recorded with last night. For those who are listening to this now, that episode's not going to be coming out for a little while, but I guess I can kind of spoil it a little bit. I don't care that much. I am going to, one of the episodes later on is Devil May Cry. I won't say when it's going to be. I'm awful at that game. So bad at that game. And it's funny because my guest on that episode was telling me how he's really bad at platformers. I'm like, well, that's my bread and butter. Those are
I'm pretty good with them.
And even like 2D platformers where I'm definitely not as good as I am at 3D platformers. It's funny because my friend Justin, who's been on the show numerous times, he can go through Mega Man, and even if it's a Mega Man game he's never played before, he's excellent at it. Same with Mario, same with Castlevania. He's good at 2D platformers. You put a 3D platformer in his hands, and he'll die a lot more often than he does in the 2D. And it's the vice versa. Like, he's still good at 3D platformers, but for me, I grew up on 3D platformers, so it's a lot easier for me to grab those controls. So I didn't actually die too often in the beginning, but I just remember, I think the first time that I did die and I realized how frail Sly really is, like how easy it is to die, that's when, as soon as I learned that, I'm like, okay, I need to be careful throughout this game, which kind of adds into the stealth mechanic that they're going for.
No, it is a game that rewards patience a lot, which is the bigger reason why I think it was so like difficult on the first playthrough, is you don't go in expecting it to reward patience to that level, to that degree. Because of the one-hit gimmick, if you charge headstrong like you and every other kid's platformer ever made, you're going to get your ass handed to you over and over again. Because these are not enemies you can rush in on. Should I talk a little about some of the enemy design here?
No, yeah, go for it.
So the very first enemy you find in the game is a big beaver swinging a hammer. And very cleverly, if you run into him, he will always hit you 100% of the time. However, if you pay close attention, he actually starts doing his attack before he's in range to hit you. He starts cycling through it repeatedly. This is now the game teaching you how he works when he still can't hit you. And if you're observant and patient, you'll notice his attack pattern. You'll notice he has a vulnerability period after every time he strikes. So, very cleverly, if you are paying attention, you can get through him really quickly on a replay of the game. You can go and hit him in seconds. But you have to already know his attack pattern.
And you have to stall just that half second before him
in order to see it. And then the very next enemy, he throws ninja stars at you. You're actually behind barriers the first time there. The game doesn't give you a tutorial about this. It just happens to be there's barriers there. He can't hit you the first time he throws them. However, if you didn't pick up on his pattern then and try to rush through, he's going to clock you right in the face with the next one. It's just like the whole game is built around enemy design like this.
About you having to sit back, observe the enemy's behavior, and then adjust as the game goes on.
Yes, so it's a game where like if you're an impatient player, you're going to have a rough time getting through a lot of it.
That makes sense. And especially because, like we mentioned before, it's very heavily relied on stealth. Stealth is not... I shouldn't say it's not heavily relied on stealth, but stealth is something they took into consideration. It's definitely a big element. It's definitely an element. One thing I really liked about it, just talking about the gameplay, even in that first level, is that it teaches you, like I said, Bentley a little bit annoys me with this, but when you see the little sparkly twinkles that you can use, so it gives you like... I like it that they explain it away in the story, like, oh, this is your spy sense. It's almost like Spidey sense or something like that. And so you know you can do something with that. So you go up to it, you press and hold circle, and now he presses himself against the wall and sidles around the corner.
Yeah, and you can use that to get around like really thin platforms. You can use that if you need to move like really quietly so you don't like alert a guard to your presence and stuff.
I also really like the fact that as you go through the game, you get different abilities. So the first couple, it's just, you sidle against a wall. You also get like you can latch onto hooks and swing and stuff like that. That's pretty early on. But as the game goes on and you find basically, actually, let's talk about the levels now. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go through every single level step by step because there's how many do you... You seem to have it memorized pretty well. How many levels per episode? The game is broken up into 5 episodes.
Yes, so there are 19 levels spread across the first 4 worlds, and the 5th world has only 2 levels, really.
Makes sense, because you're at the home stretch.
And this is excluding mini games, which we'll get into those later, too, because I have a lot to say about those, and they ain't pretty. But so the first world has 6 levels, the second one has 5th, and then the third and fourth each have 4.
Okay.
So there's actually less as it goes on, I'm assuming due to budget issues, because this game did not exactly have good budget.
It makes sense, especially because Sucker Punch only had, one other game before this?
And it didn't exactly sell well on N64.
Yeah, I actually want to look it up now. Like it's Rock, yeah, but I want to actually find it. I don't own it. I would love to be able to like check that out. So yeah, you said there's 6 levels in the first episode, and the way that the game breaks up its story is each episode is a different character of the Fiendish Five.
Yeah,
and I love the cutscenes in this game because they go for a more comic and animation
Yeah,
kind of feel.
super comic booky Saturday morning cartoon feeling to everything.
And it also feels like very like Pulp Fiction serial type of thing.
Yeah.
Because like the first episode is called Tide of Terror. And they have this really cool graphic that shows up. So it looks like if you were to go, I mean, Pulp Fiction isn't really much of a genre so much anymore, but it was very popular. What you say, like 30s, 40s, like that kind of era, in the 30s and 40s, and that the image they have totally looks like that would be on a cover of a Pulp Fiction book. You know what I'm saying?
It's like this stormy sea, and like the clouds in the sky look like a skull or something. It's just like, it's so cheesy, but it's like so fun.
But it works so well, and the game itself has such a goofy sense of humor.
It does. It does not take itself very seriously, and it works so well because of it.
And that's why I love Ratchet. Not to compare it to Ratchet and Clank, but admittedly, these two games are probably Ratchet and Clank and this are probably the most comparable out of the three of these.
I would agree.
Jack and Daxter I love still, but it's
very different.
Especially after the first game. The first game is pretty lighthearted, but there's still some pretty dark moments. And then the second one and third one on is just dark.
Well, they're like T-rated games at that point, I think.
Yeah. Well, Ratchet and Clank is teen as well, but like Jack and Dax, Jack 2 and 3 went for a very GTA approach.
Yeah.
And then Ratchet and Clank just kind of innovated on its original ideology. Same with Sly Cooper.
No, I actually don't think they did. Sly's 2, 3, and 4 are the same as each other, but they do not feel anything like Sly 1.
Really?
So Sly 2 onward, they instead of having like a hub world with little levels in it, you just have hub worlds. They're bigger, and each one's kind of open world and sandboxy. So as a result of that, the platforming takes a huge back seat, and I find that very disappointing. I love the platforming in the first game. They're a lot more combat oriented, which I don't think really fits with the stealth theme. So for instance, enemies and you can now take multiple hits in Sly 2 onwards, and I just don't like that at all. And I don't know. I would say they're very different from Sly 1. Sly 1's a unique beast. There's nothing else like it. So.
Okay. And I love Sly 1. I mean, we're going to keep going into it. But so you play through the Tide of Terror, and like we said, each episode is for a different boss. So the Tide of Terror, you fight
Sorali the Frog, yeah.
And then the one after that is Sunset Snake Eyes.
It's Mugshot.
I'll leave you the boss names because I'm bad with all the names.
Then there's Vicious Voodoo. Ms. Rubies.
Fire in the Sky.
Panda King.
And then the Cold Heart of Hate.
Of Clockwork.
We'll get to that boss fight.
We will.
That is a tough boss fight. At least I thought it was.
I have a lot to say about Clockwork, but that is positive on like the minigame stuff.
So yeah, let's talk about the Tide of Terror though. So just kind of like I said, I don't want to go through every single level because it's going to be, but maybe what are some of your highlights in that area?
So in general, the most important thing to really any game for me is actually the atmosphere. I play games with crap stories, crap level design, crap gameplay. As long as the atmosphere is good, I can usually get some kind of enjoyment out of it, though. That's why I play all these obscure games that are honestly not even that good quality, but it's just I don't know, I just like the way it feels. Sly Cooper has a unique atmosphere for every world, and I really appreciate that. So Tide of Terror is very piratey themed, but it feels not like pirates sailing on the high seas. It feels like this is the pirates' hideout with all their treasure everywhere. You know, like their dark cave or whatever that they're camping out in. So in Tide of Terror, you're actually on, I think it's the ruins. It's like an island, like a piratey island or whatever. Mm-hmm. And each mission brings you to a different part of it. So the one you're actually in the treasure room. One you're in the machines and furnaces down below that power everything here. One of them is just going through this really grand library with all these gold statues and old books and everything.
That was actually in prepping for this just to kind of get reacclimated. Like I said, I've beaten this a while ago, but it's been a while, and so I did replay a little bit of it here, and that was the last level I got up to it. So I never got past episode 1 in my most recent replay, but that was that library one that you were telling me about, because that you were just mentioning. I also did the Into the Machine, which is the furnace and the underworkings level that you were talking about. So I played a couple of those, but the library one was the last one I played right beforehand. So
there's one level in the first world I think does a really good job kind of exemplifying what I like about this game's level design. When you're in the hub world, there's actually a wheel you have to run on to lower a platform that brings you up to the level. And that's now introducing the mechanic of the level. This level's based around running on these wheels. So from here, the game just kind of keeps playing with that concept. Within the level, you find a wheel and you run on it again. It's reiterating this is how the wheel works. You run on it and machinery moves. The second time you run on it, there's an enemy nearby. So you have to run on it while also not getting hit by the enemy. The third time you run on it, there's now an enemy nearby and a searchlight that's looking for you too. You have to avoid both of these while also keeping the wheel running fast enough to power the conveyor belts. What I literally love with this game's level design is almost every level is like that if you really break it down. Every level introduces a mechanic, and they just keep building on that mechanic, and they keep like adding new twists to that mechanic as the game progresses. And not a lot of games, I feel like, actually still do that kind of level design.
And it's weird because I feel like that is the most beneficial type. That's my favorite kind of level design. But I would also make the argument, I don't know. I shouldn't say a lot of games now because I'm sure there's plenty out there that I just haven't played, but a lot of games now are more open world, and that's a lot harder to do that type of...
You really can't build upon a concept in an open world game because you have to assume that the player hasn't seen that concept yet.
You have to do RPG mechanics. Yeah. And that's the only way and that's why, I mean, what is it? Eventually I want to do a Horizon Zero Dawn episode. I adore that game, but yeah, they can't do that in that. They have to add, and almost every open world game that adds RPG elements now, pretty much takes what I consider the Far Cry 3 approach, where they have just skill trees and they just and then you just put experience points into the skill trees, and it's as simple as that. And you don't necessarily rank up the individual skills. It's just you have this skill now let's unlock these others, and you can go on down the tree and stuff like that. And that's not a bad thing. It's a different type of thing. I would say indie games now probably more than ever are doing that type of thing where they'll introduce mechanics, mainly because they've kind of gone back more simplistically to a more simplistic time. I really want to redo my episode on if you haven't played this. Have you ever played Ori and the Blind Forest?
I have been recommended that game by a few of my friends. I've never played it myself though.
That game, I said it in the episode, and I really want to redo the episode, especially because the sequel's coming out soon at the time of this recording. By the time this episode's out, it will already be out. But that game, I've never played a game where the way they introduce mechanics to you and the things they ask you to iterate, the iterations they take on those mechanics feel so natural, where by the end of the game, you're doing so many insane tricks that if you say you stop, you cold turkey it after you beat it, and you go back like a year later, you can't do it because the game has so expertly crafted you up to this level of skill that you've lost all that muscle memory now, which is, to me, that's really good game design.
I agree, yeah.
Because some players might be able to remember it and keep all that muscle memory. I'm not one of them, but I've never played... I can't remember the last time I played a game where the difficulty curve felt so natural. Yeah. It felt so perfectly balanced, and the end of it is so insanely difficult, but you 100% feel in control. Now, this isn't the Ori episode, so I'm not going to keep gushing about it, but... I
have one other level in Taiyo I want to mention, and that would be the level High Class Heist. Mm-hmm. So that was the first level I played in this game, but I realized, like, this is not going to be an easy game. Mm-hmm. So it starts off, this level's all built around the mechanic of dodging lasers. When it starts off, you're just walking down a hallway, and there's like laser beams going up and down, left and right. You kind of gotta time and walk past them. It's not that hard.
Is it like the ones that there's like four, and they kind of like they'll like bunch up together in some spots, and then they'll fan out?
Yep, and you have to like time it so you go through as they bunch up.
Yes.
Then in the second room in this level, now there is
I'm glad you
laser.
Understood my hand motions. Sorry, go on.
There are laser gates kind of creating a little maze, as well as a giant statue with like lasers coming out of its eyes, and these eye lasers follow you. So now you have to get around these lasers while also making sure you keep moving so that the eye lasers don't eventually catch you. Then the third part of this level, now you're platforming on these really small lily pads as there's laser beams in the center spiraling around, just
I'm imagining this right now because I just played it recently. It's a good level.
It's good, and it's also really hard too. You have to make these precision jumps as you're spiraling around this laser gate, as it's like whipping them around at like really fast rates. It's really hard to like time your jumps so that you can go from platform to platform without triggering one of the lasers. And the first time I played this as a kid, it took me so long to get through. But when I eventually did it, I'm like, no, this is fair. It's not throwing something at me I don't know how to fight. It's just a matter of like, when I lose, it's my fault. And I think that's how every game should be. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't like losing because the game's fault.
I mean, thankfully, it doesn't really deal with it too much in more modern games, but in older games, especially, there's a lot of talk about, for example, like the original Castlevania. That game is absurdly difficult, but a lot of the difficulty doesn't come from the limitations of the game; it comes from the player's limitations.
Yeah.
And there are limitations, like, you know, Simon Belmont can only whip in one direction, and he can't whip up or behind him or anything like that. He either and it's in when he does whip, he just goes, he pretty much like gets rigor mortis and just freezes midair until he lands. But the game is designed around that weird mechanic of how he throws his whip, and so it doesn't necessarily ever feel like the game, like it's the game's fault. It's always your fault. And so I agree with you. Like, this definitely felt like that. Especially, this is the first level in my most recent playthrough that I actually died because it was my own fault. Once again, like to your point, I missed a bottle because we didn't even talk about. That's a good thing. Well, I'll lead that into. I'll talk about the bottles in just one quick second. Yeah. But I missed a bottle. I wanted to go back, and I tried to jump onto the lily pad. Now, this point, the laser grid was off, but I completely missed the lily pad, and then I had to redo the whole thing over again.
Yeah.
But no, the bottles in each level, there is a certain number of bottles in each level. Usually, like what?
In between 20
30?
to 40.
Okay. So there's a certain number of bottles in each level.
It's kind of hidden around the levels.
Mm-hmm. And you just have to go around and explore. It encourages exploration. And it's not necessarily like, they're not absurdly hidden. You just have to, be diligent.
Kind of like look around between like look between corners. It's like, if there's a chandelier, maybe just look on top of the chandelier, see if there's a bottle on top.
Exactly. And once again, going to what you said in the very beginning of the episode, patience. The game wants you to be patient and take your time through it. So if you get all the bottles in an area, then at the very end of the level, there's a safe. And if you
press
got
the circle to enter the vault code.
Yep. And now, do you know, is the vault code different every time for each level, or is it the same for each level?
The vault codes are not consistent to level; they are linear. As in, the first vault code you always enter will be 937.
Okay.
So it's the order that you complete them in.
Now, if you know the vault code, then
no,
so
you have to get the bottles. The game doesn't even prompt you to enter them if you don't have all the bottles.
I was hoping if you could just memorize it, you could just like go there. I would wonder. Have you ever watched speedruns of this game?
Yes.
I have not. But
they can skip the entirety of the first two worlds using glitches and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
I need to watch a speedrun of this. I love watching speedruns. So but once you collect all the bottles, Bentley will then radio in and tell you, "Oh, I've just using the code, the clues you just found. I've deciphered the code to this safe." You open the safe after he gives you the code, and you get a new ability. Yeah, and you get a lot of new abilities as the game goes along. The first one I think you get used is dive.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most of those new abilities are kind of useless.
I could see that, especially if there's, what did you say? There was 19 levels. That means I highly doubt
there are 15 abilities plus
that's a lot.
Each world then on top of that has a kind of blueprint schematic which just shows you where the bottles are in the world that you haven't collected yet. So
okay. Is that what so at the bottom of each of the levels there's three things. There's the key that you get at the end of the level. You get the vault, and then is that the third thing?
The third thing we'll talk about actually after we're done talking about the levels, because that's a post game thing.
Okay, so that's time attack, I believe.
Yes,
right?
and I have a lot to say about that too.
All right, because I remember when I was replaying, I was like, well, it looks like an hourglass, so I'm sure it's time attack. And I tried to go through a level as fast as I could, and I'm like, all right, I guess I didn't get it, and I just moved on because it doesn't tell me what
you can't trigger it till after you beat the final boss.
That makes sense then. So yeah, so we talked about Tide of Terror. Is there anything else you wanted to say about it? I guess we could talk about the boss fight for Sir Raleigh.
Actually, there's one thing I want to talk for the boss fight, and that is Tide of Terror introduces the first mini game.
Okay.
So in every kind of like hub world, there are 7 missions you do. The number of levels, which I said at the beginning, 6, 5, 4, and 4. And the remainder is made up with mini games. And the mini games in Sly Cooper are horrible. They are such a massive contrast from how good everything else is. The Tide of Terror mini game is not that bad. It's kind of like a top-down shooter. You had to like shoot at crabs to collect treasure chests or something.
I hated that one.
Well, that's one of the better ones too, I'd argue.
I was just bad at it, that's all.
No, it's not that you're bad at it. It's stupid.
Fair enough.
So you move around with the left stick, okay? And you think maybe you aim with the right stick and hit a button to shoot. No, you shoot by holding the right stick.
It's like a twin stick shooter almost.
It's so unintuitive and uncomfortable. And you're shooting constantly, and you keep feeling like your fingers slipping off the stick. is just so not good.
They pretty much added a twin stick shooter mini game into it because that's what it is. That's essentially
Yeah.
what it is. I remember are the levels that I mentioned before the one where you have like Murray running through like a predetermined
Those are
route?
mini games.
Those are mini games as well. Those
Yeah.
are considered mini games. I hated those. It's not even that they were that difficult. It was just boring after a while.
We'll
At least
get
in
to
my
those
opinion.
when we talk about the other worlds, because every world has its own slew of mini games.
So then you get to once you get through all the levels, you get a key for each of the levels, and you use that key to unlock the next area. Correct?
So the keys actually, you can do the levels within a hub in any order you want.
Well, yeah, but
You use the keys to get to the boss at the end.
that's what it. That's
Yes,
what.
you have to clear all the missions to get to the boss.
And then because each of the missions gives you a key,
Yeah.
and like you said, to unlock the boss. So then, Raleigh, he was an interesting one because he like inflated himself, right?
Yes.
And then there was these big, almost like metal lily looking pads. They're definitely lily pads. That's what the analogy I think they're going for is. But it's metal, and you have to just keep dodging him until he deflates, so you can hit him.
I have no strong opinion on that boss fight. I think it works. There's nothing aggravating about it. I don't think it's particularly in-depth mechanically, but like it's fun. It's nothing bad.
And like you were saying before, how they do iterate a little bit on that boss's
No, they do.
mechanic
They
because
definitely do.
as the fight goes on, the platforms will fall away and
so it's like the
they come
first
back.
time-
But yeah,
The first time, it's just they're all there. The second cycle, the platforms will fall away after you jump on those. You have to keep moving. Mm-hmm. The third cycle is every platform goes away except for the one you're on, so you actually have to now dodge him in a small area. Mm-hmm. And the fourth one, I always didn't like this. The fourth one, he has completely changed with the rules and does a completely different attack he didn't do the first three times. It's like, oh, okay, that's just there.
what's the new attack?
He like
Do you
sticks his
remember?
tongue out and like
Oh
whips it
yeah,
around.
that is kind of annoying.
And that's kind of cheap because like every player is going to die to that their first time because there's no indication he's going to switch up his attack pattern. That is like one fault in the game's level design. Is that right there kind of sucks.
They do. They kind of have something that just reminds me. Just adding a new attack to like that's unexpected. They do that in a later boss, but it's expected. The panda, the fourth of the fiends. That we'll get into that more there, but that at least
That
goes
makes a lot
along
more
with-
sense.
Exactly. So then you move on to the second episode, which is Sunset Snake Eyes. And for those who heard the clip at the beginning of this episode, this is the boss. That is the boss from this episode.
Yeah.
What's his name again? Mugshot.
Mugshot.
I love he's kind of got like a very old school gangster vibe to him.
so
I like it, and all the levels are casino looking.
Yeah, so the second world is the first level obviously just like you getting to the city, so you're kind of going through like a deserty landscape, and then from there it has a lot of casinos, back alleys. It feels very gangster, and it's like cartoon gangster in its theme. I like this world a lot too. It's probably my second favorite world. Tide of Terror is actually my favorite one because there's the least amount of mini games in it. That's the sole reason it's my favorite.
Fair enough.
This was my girlfriend's favorite world when she played through it because she really liked the level Boneyard Casino, which I would argue Boneyard Casino is one of the best levels in the entire game, if not the best one.
What happens in that level?
So Boneyard
specific-
Casino is
specifically.
you're going through the casino level itself. The atmosphere is really cool. There's tons of slot machines you can break to get extra coins. But what stands out to me so much is I love how the second half of the level plays out. So you come to this part where you get to hop on these roulette tables. And they're just kind of there. I actually don't think you had to hop on them the first time. They're just kind of there spinning around. You can see them. If you sit on them, you'll spin around on them. Then you come to a point where you have to use the roulette tails now to get across a gap. Because there's like water everywhere and Sly can't swim. So the first time, it's just they're spinning around and that's it. It's just they're showing you have to use these. Now the second time, they are spinning around, but there are certain segments of the roulette table that have lasers on them, so you can't actually land anywhere on the roulette table. You have to be a little more precise with it.
Okay.
So as you spin past the roulette table, you have to hope that the timing like matches up to the next roulette table to land on, so that you won't hit the laser gate on it. I really like that because now it's forcing a little more timing precision. Now the next time they add it, not only do they have those segments of the roulette tables you can't stand on, there's now these like vertical gates blocking you, so you can only ride the roulette one time around each. I really like that now because now it's forcing you have to be precise on your first jump now. You can't afford to wait around and go around a second time. And then the fourth time, now the roulette tables are going backwards. You have to now jump against the spin of the roulette table while dodging that roulette table's segments and then trying to line up and land on the next roulette table and not land on its segment that's off. Because if you ride it the way it is spinning, you'll hit the laser gate. And I love how it's like each one of these is just another step on. I remember the first time playing this, I'm like, you see the laser gate and you're like, this has to be the end of it. Like, because what can they do now besides preventing you from going around once? I love they call it the clever twist. Okay, now spinning backwards. Now you got to go against the spin. It's like such a clever level in that regard.
That does sound crazy though, and especially once again, I know I keep bringing up points that we've made before, but it goes back to this first point you made about how it takes a mechanic and it iterates on it as it goes through, and it teaches you new mechanics in a very fair and not easy, but a very fair way. Just a very fair and fun way.
I think the best part of this is like there's no tutorial telling you how this works. Like Bentley doesn't interrupt you to explain to you how this works. You just see it all. And you piece together, again, if you're patient, you'll piece together what's happening. And if you're not, you'll rush in and then get killed by the laser gate part because you're expecting to ride around a second time and you can't now.
I love games that are able to teach you through gameplay.
Yeah.
There's very few that get it done right.
I agree.
And I'm not saying that like it's difficult to do. It is very, very difficult to do. It requires a lot of play testing. It requires a lot of know-how. Probably one of my other favorite examples of it is the original Portal. That game teaches you through gameplay really easily.
I love that game.
It is so good. And I don't want to harp on something that hasn't even come out yet, but the Devil May Cry, since I just recorded that last night, one of the bosses, you don't know how to beat it unless you read the manual. Because you get this ability called Devil Trigger, which essentially just like Dante becomes super powerful, and it gives you the ability to damage the boss. The game doesn't tell you in any way, shape, or form up until that point about Devil Trigger. It doesn't show you in any way, shape, or form that Dante can turn into Devil Trigger. I'm a little forgiving of it because it's an early PlayStation 2 game, and that it at this point in time in the early 2000s and late 90s is when we were finally transitioning out of the you need to read the manual to understand everything to games should just have the manuals built into the games either as gameplay or as menus. I'm personally not a fan of the menus thing because JRPGs now are so complex. They just send walls of text at you.
Xenoblade.
Does Xenoblade do that as well?
I love Xenoblade. It's my third favorite game of all time. It does like to throw tutorials at you. It's just these massive walls of text though.
And it's just I get why they have to do it, but it's just so obnoxious. So I love games that do stuff like this where the game when you learn something new, it feels so natural. It feels like you didn't learn anything at all, almost. And it's only when you
feel smart.
Exactly, and it's only when you go back to it and you go, oh, so I figured. Okay, I see this.
Yeah.
Are there any other levels in this that you liked before we talk about? Or what about the mini games?
Well, we'll get to them. There's one other level I like a lot in this. I really like the set pieces in the very first level where you're just going through the city to get to the casino. But another level that really stands out to me is level Back Alley Heist.
Okay.
I like that one a lot because the visual direction reminds me a lot of the Buzz Lightyear game for PS1 and N64, which I grew up playing a lot. Kind of how like jumping on like the side of buildings and stuff. There's like a level in that game just like it. I don't know. I won't say it's anything spectacular there, but I just personally really like that one a lot. And that one was fucking rigged when you get to the time trials, but later. And then as for the mini games of this, so this world now has 2 mini games.
Because there's 5 levels. There's a total of 7 keys in each episode, but since there's only 5 levels in this one, the other 2 are mixed. And I can see what you're saying by budget cuts now. So they wanted to have 7 keys in each. We're like, well, we ran out of time. Just fill it with mini games.
Yeah,
that makes sense now.
It's rough. So the first one is a shooter in which you arm a turret and have to protect Murray. I like to shoot Murray here because I hate this minigame. It's honestly not that bad compared to some of the later ones, but it's just like this one's all trial and error. You can react to some of the enemies, but the camera has a tendency to zoom in and out at what feels kind of arbitrary. It's trying to zoom in and out based on relevant points, but it's not very bright, I've noticed. So you kind of have to keep replaying this till you memorize where all the enemies appear to protect Murray. And it's just so like tedious and frustrating. It takes so long to get through.
And eventually you actually do another mission like this, but you're protecting Sly. Sly is the one running up. Either way, it's not
that good.
It's fine. Yeah, I agree. It's just it doesn't feel like it belongs in the game.
It feels super out of place. That said, I would rather play that minigame 5 times back to back than play the other minigame in this world.
What's this one?
The other minigame in this world is the race minigame.
Yeah.
That one is brutal. It is so blatantly unfair.
I didn't have an issue with it, actually, the first time I played.
Sometimes you get really lucky and get through it. I've had runs where I get through that minigame in 5 seconds flat. Like my first race, I win. I've also had runs where I stand there for a solid half hour losing over and over again. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. It's just so... So you're playing as Murray actually and driving the Cooper van and win a race, and you win the race, you get the key. The problems with this are the AI are way too fast and way too precise. On top of that, the van feels like it's made of rubber. It bounces off everything. You sometimes go off a slight bump in the road. The van will actually bounce up into the air, flip upside down, and then go sideways. These controls are so loose that despite the AI being near perfect, every once in a while you see the AI get into this mess too, because they're working on the same physics as you, and even the game doesn't know how to handle how bad these physics are. It is the biggest reason I don't like replaying this game, as even though I replay this game once a year. I always dread going back to these race mini games. They're so bad.
I think in general, it's reasons like this that I don't enjoy games made up of mini games. Like everyone loves Mario Party, and I'm not a Mario Party fan. Even though the mini game, I'm not saying like
it varies from game to game for me with Mario Party, but
yeah, but and even with that, they're relying on the mini games, which makes sense because that is the entirety of the game. But mini games in general, to me, I just don't find that fun. Like I don't find mini games overall as a concept within games fun. I find that it unnecessarily breaks up the aesthetic and immersion for they can do it well. I'm not saying that there's no mini games out there that don't pull it off. Like hell, in what is it, Final Fantasy VII. There's a mini game to escape Midgar. Have you played Final Fantasy VII?
I have not actually. I'm waiting for the PS4 version.
So this is no spoilers, so don't worry. Okay. You escape the main city early on in the game. You'll eventually go out into the open world. In the original FF7, actually, when this comes out, when's the release date for FF7?
February something, I think.
Yeah, so by the time this comes out, that will already be out actually. But to escape Midgard, which is the main city that the game starts in, you are driving down this highway and you are pretty much play like a Road Rash wannabe where Cloud has a sword. Guys will ride up on those motorcycles left to right and you slash your sword at them.
Yeah.
It's a little arbitrary on how the hit detection works, but overall it makes sense for the game because you're literally escaping. They built a mini game into the story instead of just feeling random, if that makes sense.
No, I feel that.
So, like, I actually think that specific one does well. Final Fantasy VII has other mini games that are useless, but and this one I actually think it pulls it off pretty well.
I feel that Sly Cooper would have been a better game if it just didn't have the mini games and had less levels in some worlds than others. You know?
Or they could have just spread it. I mean, I know you can't just like rip one level into put a place in the other because of the themes and the thematic reasons, but they could have just spaced it out. So they could have done like 5-5-5-4.
Yeah, it's kind of like rework the aesthetics of some levels. Something like that.
And they could have I'm just saying like if they would have focused more, they would have just split it up more. Like because they obviously would have had to create some brand new levels from scratch, but at the same time, all of those levels were created from scratch. So if they would have diverted that work force from the sixth level in Tide of Terror into one of the other episodes, then maybe it would be a little bit more balanced
and stuff, and
then not require 7 keys.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I don't know. A lot of times, especially with older games, especially with older games experimenting with newer gameplay styles, they felt the need to pad things out because like, oh, this game's not long enough. And especially with 3D games, I would say one of the main reasons gaming got quote unquote easier is because of 3D games. Because this is a weird random tangent, but like, and I don't think it's a bad thing because I enjoy 3D games a lot. But it's because playing in a 3D space is so different than playing in a 2D space.
You have more room to move around and stuff.
Not both literally and also figuratively, because like there's a reason why like up until Odyssey sold really well, but the Mario games, almost every 3D Mario undersells the 2D stuff. Even like new Super Mario Bros. Outsold Super Mario 64.
Yeah, which is crazy because I think Mario 64 is a way better game.
It's a great, I would agree. And same like it even outsold Mario Galaxy, and Mario Galaxy is one of the best games of all time.
Mario Galaxy only sold 4 million worldwide. It actually didn't do that well.
It's crazy.
Maybe it was 5 million, but
it's a phenomenal game, and yet it doesn't sell as well because 3D games is a lot harder for people to grasp in general. Now,
Yeah.
as people have grown up on 3D games, that has changed a lot. But if you think about it, especially like Mario 64 and like even up into the Wii, there's a lot of gamers who grew up playing 2D games, and then when they switch to 3D, it's just like, wow, this is just so foreign to me. I feel alienated. And so they had to dumb down games to make it more palatable to audiences. And only, I would say, recently, there's still some tough stuff on PS2. Like, I think there's tough moments in Sly Cooper. I was just talking about how Devil May Cry is a stupid hard game. But like, the Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii generation is arguably is the easiest generation of games, like, just period.
I agree.
There's some outliers. Demon Souls on PS3, which inevitably turned into Dark Souls, and put From Software on the map. But sorry, that's a super random tangent. But I always find it interesting, like the breakdown of how games. The difficulty and how things get padded out, because old games are super short but relentlessly difficult. Some of them are super easy, but for the most part, short but relentlessly difficult. I mean, you've seen videos of people being Super Mario Bros. 3 in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Not speedrunners either, just flat out.
No, I can do that if I needed to.
Right? So it's stuff like that. But now they have to pad games out more because the games overall are easier. And with that, though, I think the benefit of that, this is so random. Storytelling became a lot better because it allowed, since they had to pad out the game with less difficulty, they were able to focus more on the storytelling of the game.
Making a complex, believable world, making like the characters go through arcs and stuff.
Yeah, and I think, because beforehand, RPGs were really the only place that you could get like really in-depth stories, because it wasn't based off of precision, it was based off of strategy. And in later game, like now you have games that are combining platforming with shooters and RPG mechanics, like I mentioned before, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted, and these big epic storylines and whatnot. Anyway, so back to Sly Cooper. Sorry, back to
the
Sly
other
Cooper.
big epic storyline, Sly Cooper.
Yes, I do legitimately like the storyline. It's silly,
it's fun,
it's silly, but it knows exactly what it wants to be. It's not trying to be anything more than what it is.
It knows that just needs to be a goofy game about a colorful raccoon. Like, it does not try to be anything more than that, and it succeeds very well because of that.
I 100% agree. So then because we are going a little bit long, so I don't want to focus too much more on some of the stuff in here, but let's go to the boss of Sunset Snake Eyes.
Yeah, so that'd be
Mugshot. I just watched his boss fight, and so he is like, he has a goofy character design, like his arms are bigger than his legs, and he walks on his arms.
Actually,
doesn't he?
I don't think any of the Phoenix 5 members except for Panda King stand on their legs.
Really?
Mugshot walks on his arms, Ms. Ruby walks on her tail, Raleigh bounces on his stomach, and Clockwork flies.
That's such a weird thing to notice. Not in a bad way.
I only know that because one of my friends online, he's an actor out in Albuquerque. He pointed that out to me once when we were chatting at Sly Cooper, and I'm like, dude, I never noticed that.
That's so weird. That's true though. That's kind of funny.
I don't think it was intentional. It's just kind of a fun little quirk.
But yeah, so Mugshot, it definitely kind of, I don't know if I keep wanting to say Muggsy Malone or something like that, because I mean, he's a gangster.
Yeah.
But he walks around and he's kind of like a street tough. I don't know. But the whole purpose is that you have to spin mirrors to reflect light onto crystals,
which then like heats him up and burns him.
Yep, and you just have to dodge his attacks and rinse, wash, repeat a bunch of times.
Yeah, it's a fun boss. I like it.
And the final, the three, because they get progressively more difficult. The first area is just a square with the crystals.
Yeah.
And then the second one, it's still flat, but instead of being a perfect square, now there's divots, so you can't just like cut
pits.
through.
There's pits, so you gotta be careful not to fall into. You have to sometimes be a little strategic because he can like corner you sometimes now, because it's not just like an open square.
And then the final one is you actually have stuff you have to balance on, which is one of your thief abilities, where you basically all your thief abilities get activated with circle, right? Or the majority of them. So you would jump, hit circle. He does a little twirl, and he lands
like
perfectly
homes in on precision platforms.
Exactly, on these tiny little points. and you have to jump from precision point to precision point. Thankfully, you don't have to be that precise because you can hit circle and it helps out a lot. You'd have to be accurate, but you don't have to be
quit though because he'll attack you if you're too slow.
Mm-hmm. And you have to keep dodging his attacks. And on the playthrough, basically, he jumped right behind a precision point, right behind one of the mirrors, let him attack, and then he flipped it. And
yeah, that's usually what I do too, because he attacks on a timer, not based on your position. So he'll always attack at the same intervals. So if you can wait for him to shoot and then flip the mirror, then you can hopefully get to the next one for his next interval.
Makes sense.
So
yeah, that's Mugshot, and then we would move on to Vicious Voodoo. And the boss of Vicious Voodoo is Miss Ruby. Now,
Yes.
but what are some of your favorite levels throughout Vicious Voodoo?
So Vicious Voodoo only has 4 real levels because there's 3 minigames this time around.
And same with the next one. There's only 4 real levels.
But that said, I do think Vicious Voodoo has some good levels in there too. So this level is swamp themed, just like spooky, scary swamp. There's like zombies and ghosts as enemies. Very big contrast from the other 2 worlds, which are a lot more like down to earth. This one's more like fantasy and all the horror elements to it.
I like that though. That's very Pulp Fiction-y, as we were talking about
totally
before.
agree.
It feels very much there is in a lot of Pulp Fiction. Not that I've actually read it, but if you think about that type of thing, it can either be like a hard hitting type of very realistic, or I should say realistic, but Indiana Jones is the perfect example.
Yeah.
It is gritty and like creepy and scary, but at the same time it's creepy and scary not just for the events of that's what's happening, but also for the supernatural stuff they add into it that isn't quite realistic, and it's everyone's reaction, because I like that because it's positing that this stuff doesn't normally happen. Like everyone doesn't believe in this, and that's what makes it 10 times scarier. When you make it more normal, then it's not nearly quite as terrifying.
That's why I liked the ending of Uncharted 1 so much. It's like you play through Uncharted 1, and the last thing you're expecting in the last area is zombies to come out of nowhere. And I love it's completely off topic, but I love the build up. Like you're going through that creepy area, and every once in a while you see something like run in the background, and you just hear like grumbling. But like you're playing it, everything else in the game has been realistic within its own world. And then all of a sudden, the final act, zombies attack out of nowhere.
My friend and I, my friend Tristan and I, we did all the Uncharted episodes for the podcast, or all Uncharted games for the podcast. We had the same thing, and in Uncharted 2, we called them Rage Yetis. Did you play Uncharted 2?
I
right?
played all of them,
Because they would take the sap from the tree of life or whatever and turn into this crazy hulked out thing. So we called them Rage Yetis. At least that's how we always viewed them. So, and then the third game, it wasn't necessarily anything supernatural. It was all hallucinations, I believe.
Yes,
Except for those weird spider things. Those like the weird like spiders that you had to that would crawl over the walls, and you had to wave them away with fire.
It's been a long time since I played that. So.
Well, I need to stop doing that. It's become like a compulsion where if someone says anything close to it's been a while, even though you didn't say that, you said it's been a long time, I just immediately go, it's been a while. I need to work on that. Anyway.
So, okay, I talk about some levels in this. There is one level in this where as it starts, there's just like endless stream of ghosts coming at you right at the beginning of the level. And you have to be very patient, obviously, to get through them. You have to take a step at a time and just keep smacking one by one. And when you get to the end, you smash a tombstone and the ghost stops spawning all of a sudden. And that introduces the mechanic for this level. This whole level is based around the mechanic of the ghost keep spawning at tombstones.
And it's kind of similar, almost. They kind of taught you something that's similar earlier on because of the alarms in the first area.
Yeah.
And I guess alarms continue throughout the rest of the game still. But to turn off the spotlights or to turn off lasers or something like that, you have to find where it's at and destroy it.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a similar mechanic, but just done slightly differently.
No, it is. So then, as you keep going through the level, then there becomes a point where there's ghosts coming at you, but the spawner is protected by a barrier. So you need to chip away at the barrier as you keep dodging the endless stream of ghosts. So you're kind of swerving in, smacking the barrier a few times, getting out, then coming back in, smacking the barrier, stuff like that. So you can then smash it. Then the third time, now there are 3 of these spawners, all protected by barriers. So now you have to dodge multiple barriers at a time. Or sorry, multiple ghost spawners at a time while breaking down each barrier to try to get to the tombstone to smash the ghost generator. And then the fourth time, you're doing all these, but now you're on these really thin platforms. You're very limited in your movement. You can only go left and right a little bit. And you have to be very patient as you get to the spawners to destroy the barriers, to destroy the spawners. As opposed to the previous 3 times where you're kind of on flat ground. So I like how it just keeps building on the...
just
the mechanics.
Their iteration mechanic of just iterating, picking a theme for each level, picking a new mechanic for each level, or sorry, not each level, each episode.
It's kind of like
and then iterating on it throughout the different levels. And then you said there's 3 mini games in this one.
Well, I do want to talk about one other level. There's levels called like the Beast Below or something like that. And this whole first half of the level is just kind of build up. You know, there's something scary behind this big gate, so you break in and you're going through it and like trying to get to the end of the level to get the key. Mm-hmm. And you keep seeing like the reeds in the swamp moving and stuff, or like the tree kind of like tips over. And at the end, it turns out to be this like giant basilisk-esque creature, like this giant snake thing. And the second half of the level is now just running away from it as it's breaking down like you're jumping on the platforms and it like smashes the platform trying to get to you. I wouldn't say that was the most mechanical death in the world, but I really like the build up and then the payoff at the end where you're just like running from this thing. It was a lot of fun.
It's kind of like a Crash Bandicoot style thing almost.
Yeah,
like you're running away from something.
Yeah.
What are some of the other mini games on it though?
So this world has 3 mini games because apparently 2 was just not enough for them.
Another. Now they repeat mini games in some of these, right?
Only in the 4th world.
Okay.
So these are all still original ones. So the first we'll go in order from best to worst.
Go for it.
So the first one of these is actually probably the most playable mini game in this game. You're actually going through a level as Sly, but you're on a mobile turret. So it's basically a normal Sly level. It's just instead of platforming, there's mediocre shooting. It's not that bad, but I'd rather be a real level, you know?
Makes sense.
The second of these is called, God, I don't know which of these 2 is worse. They're both worse than the race and the Murray turret, which is saying something.
Oof.
And I don't even think they're the worst mini games in the game. There's worse than that.
In the next zone, I'm assuming. In the
5th world.
The 5th? Oh, okay.
So, one of these is called Piranha Lake. You have a minute and a half to go around this lake. You have to drive through piranhas, which can go pretty much as fast as you, to fuel a flamethrower to light torches around the lake. This is brutally difficult. The piranhas are way too fast. They can turn on a dime, and you can't. When you turn, you like kind of skid for a while. And on top of that, you end up getting to the point where you have 5 seconds left and 1 torch left, and you don't even know where it is relative to you anymore. Because it's like everything looks the same in this area. It's so frustrating. And then the third one is called Down Home Cooking. This one is you have to smack like 50 chickens in like a minute or something. But there's also chickens carrying bombs, and if you accidentally smack them, you die. And that's so frustrating because it's like, well, they can come out, like as you're just running smacking, one could pretty much just spawn in front of you, and you just smack it in the animation that you already started before it spawned. And I don't know why these mini games are here. They're so bad.
They could have just added. I mean, like, well, we do, like, you do. I shouldn't say we definitively know why, but it's pretty certain that it's just budget cuts and time constraints.
They could have just had less game. It's very rare I say you should have had less game, but these are just so bad. I'd rather the game just be shorter.
There's certain things where it's just less is more, and I agree with that. We mentioned Portal before. Like if Portal was any longer than it was,
it's like 2 hours long, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty short game. Maybe 5, but even so, 5 is still not a long game.
I feel it's less than 5.
I have no idea off the top of my head. I'd have to like look it up. But yeah, when Portal knows is like the perfect length for what it's trying to be.
Yeah.
Another game that's like I think it's the perfect length for what it's trying to be. Journey on the PS3.
Yeah, Journey is like an hour and a half long, and that's all it needs.
It's all it needs because the mechanics are so simple. It would be boring if it was longer than that. At least in my opinion.
No, I agree. Journey is a game that's meant to be played in one sitting. Mm-hmm. There's very few games that I feel like you should play in one sitting, and there's only one I can think of that's longer than like 2 hours, and that being Shadow of the Colossus. I argue you should play that in one sitting. It's crazy.
I don't know if I could do that all in one sitting.
It's an 8-hour day, but like I feel like the exhaustion at the end is very important to like understanding the story in that game and stuff.
Okay, so are there any other levels that stick out to you, or mini games before we talk about what's the boss of it?
Ms. Ruby.
Ms. Ruby. She's a crocodile.
I actually think we should go to her because she's also a mini game boss. But on the flip side, I think her mini game's great.
I agree. And this is actually a perfect place to talk about the difference. One of the major differences between one of the more problematic differences, I should say, between the HD remake and the PS2 version.
Original.
For the boss fight for Miss Ruby, it is a rhythm mini game where you're just essentially a rhythm and QuickTime event mini game where
Yeah.
you would see buttons coming at you like X, triangles, and squares and
Yeah.
circles, and you have to hit them on the right beat at the right interval.
Yeah.
And the problem is that in the HD remake they screwed it up.
They remixed all the music in the HD remake, and just on its own as pieces of music, I think they're all straight up worse than the originals. I can't think of one that I think is better. But for the Raleigh fight, the Ms. Ruby fight, and the final boss, the music was actually synced up to the boss's patterns. Now, it's only relevant to the gameplay of Ms. Ruby's fight, but it bothers me in all three, is that the remixes are no longer synced up to the boss's movements. I think that completely kills the atmosphere of the final battle, personally. It really took me out of the experience. I hated the final battle in the HD version because of that. But in the
Good
Ms.
to
Ruby
know.
fight, it's mechanically worse. Because now you're hitting buttons off the beat of the music because they remix it to no longer line up.
And it's funny because I'm pretty good at rhythm games. Like I'm pretty good at DDR and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I was getting so mad. I'm like, did I start getting shitty at rhythm games? I never thought I was bad at rhythm games. I always am good at it.
Play through the PS2 version. It's fine. It's just
Well, when I read that doing research for this, I had an epiphany and went, oh, I'm not bad. This game's just a piece of shit. Well, not this game, but this version's just a piece of shit.
I don't understand how something like that gets messed up. Is like, isn't that the whole point of the battle?
It doesn't make any sense to me as to why they would do that. So yeah, that's the Miss Ruby fight, and you have to do that multiple times. You have to not just hitting the buttons at the correct time multiple times, but also you're riding on something and she's sending attacks at you, and you have to hit those buttons at the specific time to dodge those attacks. When you finally get up close to her, then you can hit her with your staff, and then she jumps to the next platform, and you have to do it again.
Yeah.
I think it's like only 3 times, though, right? It's not.
Yes, it's 3 times, excluding there's a time at the beginning kind of before the minigame kicks in.
So yeah, that's pretty much the third area.
And unfortunately, I also think that's the end of the good parts of the game.
Really?
Yeah, for such a great game, it kind of has a rough ending to it. The last 2 worlds.
So the fourth episode is Fire in the Sky. What is your beef with Fire in the Sky then?
Okay, so the world isn't bad in like terms of theme. So now you're in China. It's like snowy mountains. I think that's cool. My issue is I think the atmosphere is just kind of dead in this world. It all feels like kind of lifeless and empty and boring.
I would almost argue that you've probably seen that atmosphere a bunch of times in other video games, so it doesn't feel like you don't really get like
it doesn't have like the same creativity as like the other like the casino world and stuff.
So like you said, like Tide of Terror is a pirate theme, but it doesn't feel like a pirate level at the same time.
It feels like unique.
Exactly. It's definitely unique for a pirate level. And then in Sunset Snake Eyes, you kind of have a mobster type of feel to it, but at the same time, it's more of a. It's like, what if the casino zone in Sonic the Hedgehog was good?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No intent at like ripping Sonic the Hedgehog. I love the theme of the casino zone in Sonic the Hedgehog, but it was always so difficult to like make your way through that level. Anyway, and then Vicious Voodoo, at that point in the game, like in video games, I can't think of many games that deal with
haunted
voodoo.
Swamp,
like a haunted swamp. Like you definitely have swamps,
but not usually.
But it's not like a voodoo theme.
Yeah, a lot of games you have ghosts and you have swamps. You don't usually put them together though.
And it makes sense for the voodoo theme, which is really cool. And I mean, I'm thinking like even in N64 games there were swamps. You know, like the maybe not swamps. In Banjo-Kazooie there's a swamp level.
And in Majora's Mask.
But there's no ghost. Like you said, there doesn't really... The voodoo theme in general just makes that zone really unique. And so when you get to Fire in the Sky, I can see it's
just kind of like lackluster.
It's generic mountains, it feels, I guess.
And there's only 4 levels here, again, which certainly doesn't help its case either.
Because then you have to... They pad it out with minigames again.
So it's like, okay, I like the first level. There's a cool part at the end where you're like kind of sneaking around these whole bunch of guards. We haven't actually mentioned this yet. There's a consistent type of enemy in this game called the flashlight guard. Mm-hmm. They patrol around with flashlights, and if they see you, they'll blow a whistle and other guards will come running to try to take you out. There's a part near the end of this where you have to go through like this maze to collect I think it's like little mini keys or something. And the reason for this that makes it so hard is that there's a whole bunch of flashlight guards here going everywhere. It's really intense and cool. And then as for the other 3 levels, we'll go through them because I have something small to say about each of them. there's one level that makes use of the power you get for being Ms. Ruby, which is invisibility. You can turn invisible to get through lasers and for guards to not see you. You can actually beat this level without the invisibility, though. It is possible if you go in with Golden Horseshoe, so you can tank a hit, to bypass the invisibility completely and beat this level without it. So it's like, it was trying to make use of the mechanic, but it really doesn't. I actually think it's more fun to do without the invisibility because you can go quicker.
And it also adds a little bit of a challenge to it, I guess.
Yeah. And then there's a level called the Flaming Temple of Flame, which is the worst name of any level in the game. And it's also probably the worst level in the game. It's just like so not interesting. It's just like, this is a generic Sly Cooper
I like
level.
the Rocky Temple of Rocks, personally. Anyway, go on.
What kills it is there's no mechanic in this level. It's just kind of platforming. There's one saving grace, and that is the 4th level of this world, which is, I think it's called Duel by the Dragon. We actually skipped over this. Back in Sunset Snake Eyes, there's a level where Carmelia is chasing you through the whole level.
Okay, yeah.
And now this level is the same thing. Carmelia is back chasing you through this level again, too. And it's been done before in the same game, but I don't know. It's fun. It works. It doesn't have to say it's welcome.
The Carmelita stuff, because she does that in the prologue chapter, essentially. Which actually we didn't even talk about. The prologue chapter,
it's like 10 seconds long.
Sly breaks into the police station to Carmelita's office to get information on the Fiendish Five.
Yeah,
that's pretty. And then that sets up the whole game that we've been talking about of playing through all the different episodes to defeat the various Fiendish Five enemies or bosses. But I always thought those were kind of fun just in general, just because it was she was a little bit more hard to predict with where she was going to shoot. Yeah. It's not just a lot of times when they do stuff like that in games, it's always where you just were to keep you on your toes.
She has a slight RNG to her shots, I've noticed. Her shots sway a bit. They don't always hit the exact same spot, which I think really helps add to the tension of the level because you can't predict where she's going to shoot.
Exactly. You have an idea, but then you still have to react. You have to react fast enough because you're like, oh shit, she's shooting at a spot I was not expecting. Yeah. It's really cool. I do. I think that's why those levels work, is because of the RNG. It makes it a little bit more interesting.
In this level specifically, there's a spot by the end where you're doing precision platforming on like flattened like icicles kind of. And she'll actually get clever, and as you're in midair, she'll shoot the one you're going to land on. She'll actually, like, her AI is able to, like, figure out which one your shootings land on next, and she'll shoot at that. So you have to start trying to, like, trick her to shoot at the wrong one, and then, like, double back in midair to a different one. And it's like, that's cool.
I like that. And it fits in with her RNG that they've kind of set up throughout the game as you play through different levels with her. Are there any mini games that would stand out in this one before we move on to the boss?
I would even say kind of no, because all 3 mini games here are rehashes of other ones, because this world sucks. So there's a rehash of the Murray turret, and it's like the exact same thing. Except there's a part near the end where Murray's triggers an alarm and just sits there like a dumbass for like a minute straight. And you just keep taking out guard to guard, like, Murray, you can go get the key. I got you covered. And he just sits there.
It's not fun.
There's a retread of the mobile turret from the previous world, which I feel the same way as it did in the previous world.
It's fine.
It's functional, but I wouldn't miss it if it wasn't there. And then there's a retread of the race, except now you're on ice physics with this bumpy ass car that falls over constantly. Well, now it's on ice. It's somehow worse. Oh, that race is so bad.
Like I said, man, mini games just not my thing.
Like I said, this game, Sly Cooper, for such a great like first 3 worlds, it kind of falls apart near the end, which is so unfortunate.
I will say though, the final boss, which I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on it, I actually think it was satisfying for me at least because it was difficult. But
I have a lot to say about the final boss.
We'll go into it then. But so the boss for this zone, what is it? He's a panda.
Panda King. So
just Panda King.
He's a kung fu dude who actually is kind of a cool idea for lore. He integrates fireworks into his kung fu. So like he'll do a chop and shoot like a little fire rocket at you.
And his whole scheme is that he's just like extorting money from towns to not so that way he doesn't drop avalanches on them with his fireworks.
He uses his fireworks to start avalanches.
It's what
they pay an avalanche protection fee to him or whatever. I love just how ridiculous and cartoony that is.
That's such a goofy. I love that. You're right. Oh my god, it's charming as like for a sinister. I use that in quotations a lot. It's just
it's so ridiculous.
It's charming. I love that. But we were talking before about how Sir Raleigh, the first boss, he adds a new mechanic that doesn't go in. The tongue whip, which is out of context. It's such a weird thing, but In this, the entire boss fight is like that. You basically have to dodge his fireballs to get up to him so you can hit him.
Yeah.
And even when you're hitting him, you can hit him more than once, and he does a specific move on the first try. I think it's just like
Fiery Wheel first.
Yeah.
He has Fiery Wheel, Booming Chop, and Palms of Thunder.
And Fiery Wheel is a kick, and you have to jump over the kick. And you hit him a couple times, and then he'll just kind of belly bump
Yeah, and
you
you have
away.
to kind of, like, repeat the process.
But now there's a new move. So right off the bat, it teaches you the different moves, and by the end he learns he has a bunch of different moves that he uses against you.
Yeah, and he doesn't just like the second phase. He's not just doing the new move. He's mixing up between that move and the move from the previous phase. And the next phase, it's like he uses all three. And what I really like about this is, even though they are new moves, he kind of broadcasts what he's going to do if you're paying attention to him. Because when he does like Booming Chop, he raises both his hands to the side, and then that move is he slams down, but there's a blind spot right in front of his face because his two hands go next to you then. And you can see that coming because of how he raises his hands. When he does like the Fiery Wheel kick, you can see his foot sweeping across. He actually starts behind him and goes the long way around to get to you. So you can see it coming. You have to have quick reactions. You have to be paying a lot of attention to his movements. But it's not like Raleigh, who just comes down and smacks you with the tongue and you die, you know?
Yeah, this broadcasted a little bit just so... Yeah, like you said, it broadcasts just enough so it gives you a chance to react.
Yeah,
so
and you can still mess it up, especially because some of the starts look kind of similar, so you have to be paying a lot of attention. Is this attack or that attack?
Mm-hmm. So then it moves into the fifth and final episode of the game,
Which I think is the worst one.
The Cold Heart of Hate.
There are 2 levels here.
And they're both brutal.
So
from what I remember.
This one's a little different. You don't have a hub world and there's no keys. You do the levels linearly, so we can go through them all one by one. And it's a whole bunch of minigames. It's almost all minigames.
Fantastic.
So the first part is you're on the back of the van, and you're it's like a turret minigame. As the van's going, you have to shoot mines in its path, rocks coming down, and like these robot birds that attack you. It's fine. It's a little crappy sometimes. Like there's clearly a mine they were trying to shoot at, and Murray's like such a dumbass. He drives right into it. Like, Murray, just hit the brake for a split second. The second one is you're trying to get computers. Doesn't make any sense. You're trying to collect computers. So the way you collect them is you run them over with the van, and you have to stop fire slugs from stealing the computers. Like, what do they want the computers for?
Surprisingly, I never even thought about it, because when I played that the first time, I didn't think about it at all. I just thought, oh, this is obnoxious, and I just did it. Right?
That one sucks.
But you're kind of right if you think about it. Like, everything in this world has been grounded in some form of their reality, and this just feels like it separates from their form of reality.
This feels like this was made as a mini game first, and then they slapped on what you're actually doing second, as opposed to like thinking of like how the world will actually function.
That makes sense. So that's the first level?
Those are the first 2.
Those are the first 2.
So then the third one is actually a platforming level, and it's a really good one. It is very, very difficult. And what I like is it's very short, too. You can do the whole thing in like 20 seconds if you're very precise with it. But it makes you use like every mechanic you've learned throughout the game, like in quick succession, and sometimes combine them together, and I like it a lot.
And then you fight the boss.
No, there's a little more. So the next level is the worst minigame.
Okay.
This is Bentley's hacking minigame. Sly gets captured, so Bentley has to hack him out. Do you remember that shooter with the crabs back in World 1?
Yes.
It's like that, except a million times worse. So the visuals are kind of cool. You have like these like vectorized graphics, so like all monochrome and green. You're in these small little spherical arenas, and you have to shoot at what's called data pack. It's basically, there's a giant green block you have to shoot at to break it away to get to the yellow thing inside, which is like the code Bentley's trying to steal.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. You have 5 health points. If any of these like green bits, when you shoot them, they start bouncing around the arena. They just keep going. They don't dissipate ever. You have to destroy them by shooting them if you don't want to get hit by them. They hit you and take away some of your health. Then they introduce, in the second level, enemies. These enemies hit you once, it takes away all your health, insta-kills you. You touch them, it insta-kills you. There are multiple enemies on screen. Sometimes like 20, 30 of these little green squares bounce around everywhere, and they're small and hard to see, and they just hit you in a small, tight arena as you're also trying to navigate, shoot stuff, and pick stuff up. And need I remind you, you shoot in this game by holding a direction on the stick, not hitting a button. It's so frustrating. And it goes on and on and on. And if you die, you go back to the start.
And it just feels like it's unnecessarily padded at that point. Like you said, the game would have been better if they just cut out this type of stuff.
Oh, and you know how bad this minigame is? This one comes back in Sly 2, and you do it 16 times in Sly 2. I don't get why people call Sly 2 the best one. It's so bad.
I still need to play Sly 2,
No,
but
you don't. No, you don't.
I want to. I do. I actually started it right after I beat Sly 1, and I just never got very far in it.
Take all the time you're going to play Sly 2 and just play Sly 1 over and over.
So is there anything else prior to the boss then?
Yes, so then after that, you have another turret minigame. This time you're playing as Carmelita and defending Sly, which is a clever twist. I think it's better than the Murray ones, honestly. It's a lot shorter. There's a part near the end where you can kind of trick it out. So Sly gets this part where you have to like shoot obstacles for him to get through. Mm-hmm. And as you're shooting the obstacles, enemies can attack him. But at the first obstacle, no enemies attack you. The mechanic's supposed to be that like, okay, at this first obstacle, it's now teaching you to destroy obstacles, and then like enemies are going to attack in progression, like building upon it. But you can cheat the game out here. As Sly's running at this first obstacle, you can just take out all the other obstacles in front of him before taking out the one immediately in front of him, because he waits there.
Okay.
And then he'll just run through and the enemies won't get him. So you can just kind of bypass half this minigame.
That's kind of smart. I might, if I do go back and replay it after this, because like I have a lot of other games for this summer of PS2 to get to,
Yeah.
so I might not get to it for a while. But it just sucks because like I picked this big project, and there's a lot of games I want to play coming out this year. Oh, it's aggravating. But no.
So then there's one level left before the final boss.
Okay.
And this one, you're on a tower that's sinking in lava, and you're trying to climb to the top. I love this level. It is crazy hard. You are on such a strict time limit for getting up this tower. It's sinking really fast. But as you keep going up, it's just kind of like calling back to old mechanics again. It just feels really satisfying to beat. And then you have the final boss from there. So the final boss is Clockwork. One thing I really like is at the cutscene in this game, if you're paying close attention to all the history, you see Clockwork's silhouette in these old photographs in the Thievius Arcunis. Some of these pictures dating back to ancient Egypt. And it's like, what the hell's going on?
Do you
here?
remember? Sorry, this is a little bit, but it's tied to what you just said.
Yeah.
What Sly's relative was who lived in Egypt. It was
Slight in common.
Oh, that hurt me.
Yeah, that's a pretty bad.
That hurt me really bad when I was watching the boss fights again in preparation for it, and this happens right after I believe you beat Miss Ruby. I think. Yeah. And when they said slight in common, it's
like that's the best they could do.
I cried a little bit on the inside. Anyway, move on. So going on. So you find out that
Clockwork here is it's actually kind of cool in almost a philosophical way, which is so weird because the rest of the game is like so not complex.
It's so silly, yeah.
So Clockwork was a rival thief back in the original Cooper line started. His hatred of the Coopers grew so much that he tried to find a way to cheat death. So what he slowly started to do is, as his body parts started to fail, he'd replace them with robot parts. At this point now, he's fully mechanical and has been for centuries. He's essentially no longer alive, but that begs the philosophical question, like, at what point was he no longer living?
Yeah.
He has all the memories of Clockwork, he has the personality of Clockwork, but it's very clear this isn't Clockwork anymore. Clockwork's dead, but at what point was he no longer alive then?
Well, then that goes into the whole thing. You ever see the anime Ghost in the Shell?
No.
The whole premise of it is that there is this... So Ghost in the Shell, that movie is one of those movies where they throw a lot of terminology at you that's relative to the story, but is not like you don't understand the context. It's like it'd be like going someplace where they use a specific form of slang that you don't know at all, but you technically know everything that they're talking about, but you don't know that you know it because they're using words you've never heard before, right? Oh, that makes it sound that's just another language then, but it was literally just like that. So that whole anime goes into the idea of like what really it does it mean to be a human, because then I forget exactly. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but essentially a new human soul, quote unquote, was created in the digital space through just randomness. It's not like it was born from somebody.
Yeah.
It was just creative in the collective conscious of the internet, and it started like becoming self-aware and stuff like that. Hence hence the ghost in the shell type of thing.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting concept. So you kind of get into the idea of like, well, if you retain Clockwork's consciousness and you retain his personality and his memories and all this other stuff, so he is everything that makes him, just minus the physical body. So is he still really him, or is he not?
Yeah,
I know the game doesn't ask that question, nor does it
like
try to
read
answer
into
it, but it's kind of fun to. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of fun to read into it.
Have you ever heard the grandfather's axe paradox? It's like, this is my grandfather's axe. It's been in the family for years. We had to replace the handle a few times, and the head's been changed out once or twice, but still his axe.
Yeah. So
But like, is it then?
Yeah, because then it at that point it doesn't it. I guess the argument is: are the memories more important, or
it's like,
is it the legacy of who gave it to you more important, or is it the physical item? More
but then it's
important?
like, what if you take the old axe head and handle and put those together? Now you have 2 axes. Which one's his?
Yeah.
So as cool as this is, Sly 2 botches is so bad. So there's a line where Clockwork says he's been fueled by hatred, which I interpreted even back as a kid to mean that like hatred was his drive. That's what led him to cheating death. Sly 2 changes like, oh no, he's quite literally fueled by hatred. The reason he's now a robot is because his hatred turned him mechanical.
So they're literally using hatred as a fuel.
Yes.
As a literal
And
fuel.
I feel like that's kind of jumping a little too far.
It's jumping the shark a little bit.
Yeah, it just seems a little ridiculous to me. It's like, I did not like that. That's like the plot twist at the end of the game too. I was like, that just felt like
It's not a plot twist.
I already didn't like Sly 2, and that just like made me like, yeah, I'm never playing this game again.
So what did you want to talk about with this boss fight here?
Everything. I love everything in this final boss fight. I love the use of colors and visuals. I love the dialogue he has with Sly. The soundtrack here is great. Again, the HD version botched it. The original soundtrack for this fight, first off, it's very well synced to the battle itself. But second, it's very MIDI, and it sounds very droning and dead, which I think is so fitting for what Clockwork has become now. He's like the shell of something living. In the HD version, they added a choir, they added orchestral instruments. It's so overdone, it feels too organic. I'm like, this song was supposed to sound dead.
Because Clockwork is dead.
Yeah, and like, they just ruined it so much.
I'll have to actually play the original. I didn't know there was that many differences.
Oh, we haven't gotten to the biggest difference yet. That's in the post game.
Okay.
So we'll move on quickly here.
But okay, so then the with the final boss, the first thing that, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you basically, it's like a flying segment where you have to shoot Clockwork.
It is a mini game.
It is a mini game, but it's a fun one.
Yes, it works really well. You're on like a jetpack and you fly around and shoot at him,
and you can dodge his attacks. He shoots these electrical donuts at you pretty much, and you have to fly through the center of them to dodge them, or the outside. But I think it's easier to
center.
go. Is it the center?
Yeah, if you go on the outside, you always get hit.
You always get okay. So yeah, so you fly through the center and to dodge him while shooting him, and once you do enough damage to him while dodging all those electrical donut things, then you get to a second phase.
Actually, that is the second phase. The first phase, he's just shooting like regular like lasers at you.
Okay.
And after that, then you get to a third phase where he's now on the ground, and you have to platform and stealth your way up to his head. And
that's a tough segment too.
It's really tough to get
fun.
to. But what I love is once you get to him, it's a victory lap. So when you get to him, he has a health bar, but he is defenseless at that point. You just wail on him until he's dead. And I love that.
And it's good
like,
game design. It makes
reward.
you feel powerful.
Yeah.
You did the toughest part of the game, and now you get to like destroy him with ease.
Your reward is you get to tear him up. And I love how, like, since he's a machine, they can be as gory and violent as they want, you know? As you're hitting him, it's like his eye goes flying out, and like screws and springs go like shooting out of his mouth and stuff. And like it's just so satisfying. You feel like you're tearing him up for all like the strife he's caused you. You know?
I agree. I like that in a final boss. I like a final boss that actually feels satisfying to you to the end. Any other things to talk about before we go into the New Game Plus?
So the final cutscene's cool. Carmelia's trying to arrest Sly, and she gives him a 10-second head start. And I love the cutscene. He's just like sitting there waiting, and then when she says one, he kisses her, and then she's stunned from it with like hearts. Then all of a sudden she's like angry and furious, and you see that he handcuffed her to the rail there as he left. And it's like, I love how like he's such a dick there, but like that's so funny.
I almost wonder if the Carmelita and Sly relationship is kind of like Carmen Sandiego. You know what I'm saying? Like it's Carmen Sandiego, Chief and Carmen Sandiego type of thing. I understand. I don't know. I don't remember Carmen Sandiego well enough. I don't think there's a love interest between the Chief and Carmen Sandiego. Yeah. There's a podcast I listen to that purports that, but I don't think Chief and Carmen Sandiego have a romantic thing. But anyway, but yeah, no, that is a cute little way to end it and have it and continue her chase of Sly, and continue her obsession with him.
Yeah, because now there's so close to getting him.
Yeah,
she lost him. And then, I don't know, it's one of my favorite credit sequences in any game. It's actually really short. This game had a very small team working on it. It's stuff like the guy who voiced Bentley was also like the lead programmer or something.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
it's like they just used like the staff of the game to voice the characters.
The voice acting's not awful either.
No, it's pretty good.
It's serviceable, especially for like an early PS2 game, like when voice acting first started getting like into the forefront. Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I really like the credits song. I think it's really catchy.
I'd have to listen to it again.
Yeah.
I have the game right over there. I can replay it.
You should.
So
Oh, actually, while we have the game here, really cool little detail. The instruction manual doesn't say like Sly Cooper and Thievius Arcanus on it. It's not the box art of the game. The instruction manual presents itself like this is the Thievius Arcanus book from the game.
Yeah, it's actually in there.
It has like, it looks like it's obviously just
in my
printed on
copy, I
paper,
should
but
say.
it's like designed to look like it's leather bound, and there's like all these diagrams like thief moves and instructions on how to perform them in there. It's like, that's so clever.
I miss stuff like that. I understand why they don't have manuals in games anymore, in physical copies of games, but like I'm playing through another game for this podcast, and they have like something similar to that. I'll tell you off mic what it is, just because I don't want to spoil anything for the upcoming episodes. But I love games that do that. Actually, I can say, at least in like Jack and Daxter, they had the full map of the game world in that. And even though it wasn't like, I think that's more immersive what they did there. But hell, even in games like, you ever play the first Metal Gear Solid game?
I own the entire Metal Gear series. I've not played a single one.
In the first game, you have a thing called a codec. All of them have codecs.
Yeah, I know them because Smash.
Yeah, and you can change it to different frequencies. It's a radio station, essentially, right? Or a radio tuner, and change it to different frequencies to hear stuff. There's one point in the game where they actually say you have to go to the back of the case and get the codec that's written on the back of the case in order for you to progress forward.
Through.
There's also
The controller swapping one, I know.
Yeah, with Psycho Mantis, which is definitely interesting in the PS3 version, because you actually have to turn off your controller and connect it into. Well, you can disconnect. Yeah, you have to connect a second controller and then turn off your other one. It's really weird how it works. Yeah, but it was kind of fun. But yeah, so anything else before New Game Plus?
Well, it's not really a New Game Plus. It's more like additional content to the current file.
Okay.
So for being in the game, you get to unlock the Japanese version of the intro cutscene, which is kind of cool. And then Bentley tells you, and he tells you this on the PS3 version as well, and we'll get to why that's a bad thing in a minute, that now you've unlocked the Master Thief Sprints, which are time trials. You can go back to all the previous levels and try to beat them under a clock. The reward for beating all these on the PS2 version is a director's commentary for the level you beat the time trial on, where they talk about the level and how they designed it and stuff. And the reward for beating all of them is you get an actual behind-the-scenes making of video, which is really cool. On the PS2 version. On the PS3 version, he tells you get these commentaries. You don't. They took them out for no reason, and there's nothing in their place. So that's already kind of sucks that they got rid of what I personally think is a really awesome reward. I like hearing the behind-the-scenes stuff.
I think that's something that they don't do enough of.
Yeah, totally.
Games, and especially for someone who, I talk about video game history a lot. It's really cool for me to see behind-the-scenes stuff built into the game like that.
Mm-hmm. But what sucks more is Bentley still tells you in the PS3 version you unlock these, but they're not there. And to make it all the worse, these are the most absurdly hard things you'll probably ever do in a game. So the first level, you have, I think it's like 90 seconds to beat. My record is to get at the end with 0.1 left on the clock.
Really?
They are that tight. There are a number of these that, as far as I'm convinced, you cannot beat without skipping major parts of the level using tricks and stuff. Thank goodness at half the levels have these obscure tricks you can do to get through them ultra fast. Because some of these are borderline impossible without those. These are just there is no room for error at all. So we already previously mentioned the one-hit rule and that you could bypass that by having a lucky charm, which just you reward for 100 coins. Whenever you start one of these, they actually take away your lucky charm, which I'm fine with. But it doesn't even matter. If you did have the lucky charm, the animation of Sly getting hit and getting back up takes up enough time you weren't going to be able to beat the time trial anyway. That's how strict these are. You cannot get hit. You have to go through the whole level with one shot, and you cannot miss a single jump or miss precise anything. It is so strict.
Well, I'm actually kind of happy to know it's that strict, because that saves me the effort of trying to do it. I'll just look it up on YouTube.
I have done them all twice. First time for my original Let's Play of the game in 2013, which I've taken down. Second time for my 2018 Let's Play. I don't think I'm ever going to do them again.
I don't blame you. That sounds incredibly frustrating.
They are, but they're also so satisfying to do. So the whole video in total ended up being about 35 minutes, I think, because there's only 19 levels, and you have to do each one like a minute or two.
Mm-hmm.
But the reward is so cool. So throughout this whole time, I've been talking about these game mechanics. That's just not me reading too deep into these. They actually talk about some of these mechanic ideas, how they're building upon them in their commentaries for each level. And I love hearing that. I think what makes this game so good is Sly Cooper was hardcore a passion project. And hearing their commentaries, you hear how proud they are of every achievement in this game. They knew this was a low-budget game that was destined to not sell that well in the long run, and it didn't. Of the three platforming mascots, Sly Cooper sold the worst.
It makes sense because it definitely was not the most popular one that I would say.
No.
Almost nobody I knew owned the game. Everyone would.
No.
Jack and Daxter by far was like the big boy in terms of sales.
Totally.
And then Ratchet and Clank was underneath it.
And then Sly was like a few tiers below that in sales.
Yeah.
But hearing these, it's like you kind of get the vibe they knew it wasn't going to be a success, but they're just proud of what they achieved. And I think that kind of like just genuine desire to make a good game is what led to the game being so good in the first place. I don't think they would have cared if the game bombed in sales. They were just so happy to make the game as good as they wanted to make it. So I think that's a very respectable reward in itself, just hearing them all be like so happy with their project.
In general, I find game designers to be like that. Don't get me wrong, you still have the shovelware stuff that people put
totally.
out, but like
my favorite shovelware ever, Pets Cats 2. Do you know anything about that game?
no.
So that is a Legend of Zelda ripoff in which you use a magic hat to stop an evil wolf from taking over the world, and you also play as a cat. Despite the fact that the back of the box talks about raising a cat, dressing up in outfits, competing in contests, and playing with a cat laser with them. None of that's in the game. It blatantly lies to you on the box.
It's a Zelda clone?
Yes.
What?
And you don't move with the arrows or the analog stick. You move by pointing the Wii Remote cursor at the screen, and the cat walks towards it in a 3D action game. I am, as far as I know, the only person 100% that game, because part of 100% presenting that game required, no exaggeration, more than 10 hours of RNG grinding.
I'm at a loss for words on that.
My girlfriend and I have a full playthrough of that game on my YouTube channel, and I also did an hour-long video essay about why that was one of the worst video games of all time.
That I can't wrap my head around why they made Zelda into a cat.
And it's called Pets Cats 2, as if it's the sequel to another one, and it's not.
It's not?
No.
Oh, this is just hurting me more. I think you even mentioned it when we recorded the Smash Brothers one. I think you were in the middle of doing that at the time.
We were playing through it. That was this past summer. We were doing a Let's Play of that.
Oh my god, I love that exists, but I hate that exists at the same time.
If you want a copy, they go for $3 sealed.
Sealed. It's funny. But okay, is there anything else that you want to say about the game before we wrap up? Or would you like to wrap up with your final thoughts on it, I should say?
Sly Cooper and Thievius Raccoonus is one of the best video games I've ever played in my life. I don't know if it would quite make a top 5 for me, but if it doesn't, it would definitely be number 6. Like, I adore that game. I play through it annually. I always go back to it, and it's so weird, too. I didn't realize how good that game was until high school. I didn't... Like, as a kid, I liked it, but it didn't click with me. Like, this game really is, like, better than a lot of the other stuff I played.
I can understand that completely. I was the same with same way with Ratchet and Clank. Played it when it came out. I'm like, yeah, this is fine. But then as an adult, I'm like, oh, this is freaking awesome. This is so good.
No, and if you have not played this game, like, you are doing yourself a disservice. And if you've only played the sequels, if you like the sequels and you hated me for saying Sly 2 sucks, that's fine. You're allowed to think that. But at least play Sly 1 at some point. You owe yourself that much.
I also really enjoyed this game. I played it about a year ago or so on the Sly Cooper collection, which I found out is an awful port of it. But
we played it. You have it right there.
I didn't have it at the time. And also it was at the time I didn't have this nice tube TV, which is kind of weird to say, like, but there's a reason why games look better on old TVs.
Old games do, especially.
Old games specifically, yeah. I have a friend who actually took his NES Mini, the NES Mini, got an HDMI to AV converter and plugged it into a tube TV. It looks fine.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing. It's a weird length to go, but he did it.
My tube at home sits on the floor, and it is 5 feet tall to the top. I have a massive tube at home.
That's awesome.
It is older than I am. It is from 1991. It still works perfectly. The sound quality on it is amazing too. It's Pioneer, and they were known for their great sound quality. That's my TV. I get to take it when I move out. My dad bought it years ago, and he's more than gotten his money's use out of it. I mean, the thing's still kicking 30 years later.
That's going to be a bitch to move.
I have no fucking idea how I'm getting... It's in my basement now. I'm like, this thing is bigger than the stairwell. I don't know how we got it down here. I think we had to take it apart.
Take it apart?
Yeah.
What?
Well, because my dad was going to throw it away, but then he was like, you could probably use this. You like these old tubes for your games. And so I think he and his brother took it apart and moved it down, which I think means my girlfriend and I got to take it apart to move it out.
Jesus Christ.
But it's such a great TV.
But anyway, so yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up this episode. Ben, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was a lot of fun. This game's really good. If you've not played it, like Ben said, you have to give it a shot. It is very fun. It's very charming. Even if you end up not liking the gameplay,
At least now you know.
Yeah, that, and also I think the charm of it is just something worth witnessing. I think it's a really cute game and just a very fun one to play.
I actually have two closing thoughts we didn't address.
It.
First being, we mentioned the art style briefly for the cutscenes. We did not talk about the in-game graphics. This game did cell shading before Wind Waker made it like a known thing. It was about a year before Wind Waker. It actually does one thing that I wish Wind Waker did. I wish Wind Waker had an outline on the characters. Sly Cooper does, and it looks great.
I've talked about this. I don't know if I've talked about. I feel like I've said this. Yeah, I've definitely said this before on the show. I don't remember which episode, but art direction is probably the most important thing to the longevity of a game.
It totally is.
Don't get me wrong. Mechanics. If the game is mechanically bad, yeah, that can have a bigger effect. But 9 times out of 10, if a game was popular at one point in time, mechanics are serviceable.
Yeah, they're at least playable.
Exactly. Artwork is not. Artwork, if a game, art direction is the most important thing to keeping a game's longevity over time. Sly Cooper, just playing on the PS2, still looks good.
If you have a tube. It does not look good on flat screens on the PS2 version.
Fair enough. I mean, the HD remake looks good, though.
It does look good. I will give it that.
Despite all of his other flaws. Like, the game itself just looks good still.
Yeah, it's very pleasant.
And you can say the same thing. Like, I'm a huge Medal of Honor fan. When I go back to play the original Medal of Honor game on the PS1, oof,
it's rough.
It's rough, and it's because it was designed with the graphics for its time.
Totally.
But art direction is super important. That's why Metal Gear Solid still looks decent even though it's a PlayStation 1 game. That's why Ocarina of Time still looks okay
enough for 1998.
Yeah, on an N64 with fuzzy N64 had bizarrely fuzzy graphics. I never understood why.
I can explain that to you maybe a little later if you want, but
okay.
I have a little technical understanding of some of it.
But anyway, so that's a good place to stop though before we go into everything. You had one more observation.
I have one more point.
Sorry.
Very small thing almost no one knows. At the end of every level, you get like a newspaper headline showing Carmelita busting someone. It's only on screen for a split second, but the one after panicking, the headline reads, "Dude, that's kick ass." They got that away in a kid's game and no one noticed.
That's awesome.
And
it's almost like one of those things where they would sneak things past the sensors on like cartoons and stuff.
And I don't know anyone else I'm the only one I know I point that out to people and they're always like, I never saw that.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't notice it either, especially because like it's only on the screen for a split second. You probably don't notice it, but anyway. So that should do it for this episode of Still Loading. As usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Still Loading Pod on all of them. If you want to support the show, you can you can do it a couple ways. You can just give us a 5-star review on whatever podcatching device you're using, or leave me a review, write me a review, tell me what you think of the show. You can also support the show monetarily by checking out my Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. Even just $1 a month helps the show grow, and I would love to help the show continue to grow. Check out the Podbeard Network, the network I'm a part of. I do this literally every time. I forget to mention the network until the very end. Podbeardnetwork.com. And Ben, what do you have a YouTube channel? I know we were talking about it.
You can find me on YouTube under the name Fabulous Fish. That's fish spelled GHOTI. You type that in, I'm probably the first result. You can also follow me on Twitter under the same name.
Well, isn't Fabulous spelled a different way too? Like
it's just a GH.
Yeah.
Google autocorrect it if you go onto YouTube with it.
Okay.
Currently, I'm actually in a weird transitional phase where I've been integrating more video essay and analysis kind of videos, putting my media analysis degree to good use in my world because I'm not doing anything with that at work. But I do have also a plethora backlog of different Let's Plays, some of which are done with my girlfriend, some are done with other people I know. I like to pride myself in my quality standards. I will not upload a Let's Play to YouTube unless I'm 100% sure it is the best Let's Play of that game available to watch. I will actually re-record the entire thing from scratch if I don't think it is. So you can rest assured knowing that I think my quality is very high for what you do see, because you won't see it if it's not. Additionally, you may follow my girlfriend Cat2101. She is on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. She does art regularly. She's open to taking art commissions now. She does all the artwork and branding for my channel. And then on her own YouTube series, she does a video. Yeah. Then on her own YouTube channel, she does a series called Summary Sketch, in which it's think Drunk History meets kind of Draw Your Life, except the focus is literature. She'll summarize a different short story or novel she's had to read for an English class, with like a comedy skits mixed in and like her own artwork kind of to help convey the story to you. They're like 5 minutes long. They're really good if you didn't read the book and have an exam coming up on it in the next day or two.
That's pretty cool. I like that. So yeah, that should do it for this episode. Thank you all once again for listening. Check out Ben and his girlfriend, as he mentioned with all his plugs. Thank you once again for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that should do it. So I will see you all next time.